On this episode of Just Raised, we're talking about creators, Carbone, orange soda chicken wings, collectible pizza boxes, cloud kitchens, mukbangs, and most importantly, food. Food delivery is not the most exciting industry. Brutal competition, low margins, commodity product, but Popchew is changing all of that, and they're one of the most exciting consumer companies I've had on the show. Our guest, founder Rushir Parikh, is building a platform for creators to launch a new food franchise overnight. If you're familiar with Pomp's, Anthony Pompliano's Bitcoin Pizza, that was Popchew's very first sale. So that's enough for me, but I hope you enjoy this glimpse into the future of food with Rushir Parikh, founder and CEO of Popchew. Rushir, it's great to talk to you. You guys at Popchew are building the infrastructure for any creator to build essentially Mr. Beast burgers. So to dive right in, what is Popchew and how are you building that?
I think over the last several years, we've seen creators develop all sorts of products and be able to reach their audience. But one of those categories that they haven't really been able to touch yet is food, right? If you're a creator and you want to do food, your only option is open up one single location and maybe only reach 0.1% of your audience. Or you're a mega celebrity like a Travis Scott and you can do a deal with McDonald's and get a very small percentage of the total revenue that they're bringing in. And so we built Popchew to basically cater to those creators that are in the middle who want to be able to reach their audience through food.
It sounds like you've always loved food, and that's definitely in the DNA of this product. Sounds like you really wanted to work at Uber Eats as your first job. Where does that come from, and why is that in the DNA of the company?
Totally. I grew up all around food, right? So my uncle's a chef. He has 5 restaurants in Oxford, Mississippi. He's won the James Beard Award for Best Chef in the South. And growing up, I was spending my middle school and high school summers chopping onions in the back of the kitchen. And so I had this really early love for food. And as you mentioned, Uber Eats was where I really wanted to work. But I was 19, college dropout, never hearing back from the recruiters. And I ended up actually running Facebook ads about myself, targeting Uber employees, hoping that maybe they would reach out to me. And actually they did. And so there was this guy named Akshay who was working on marketing at Uber Eats at the time, reached out, and we just became friends and would just chat about what's next in food, and ended up writing a blog post with him about creators entering food. And this is how it all got started.
How does this actually work? How many stores do you get into? Who are some of the creators you worked with?
At a fundamental level, the way it works is we have a network of independent restaurants all across the country that we're every day adding more and more to. And so one of the creators that we recently worked with is this YouTuber named Zeus. Zeus is in the hip hop community, wanted to do a wing brand that was able to reach his audience, wanted to have unique flavors. We have a test kitchen here in Manhattan, so we put together a really fun menu for him. He came in, taste tested everything. We brought some fans in. They were able to taste test. And we came out with a bunch of really unique flavors, right? There's an orange soda wing. There's a Chipotle raspberry wing. Flavors that you wouldn't find anywhere else. But, he loves, and our, culinary team was able to really get creative and put their love into it as well. And then we basically train all of our restaurant partners on producing that spec product. And so overnight, we're essentially able to build franchises for the creators that we work with.
So going back to the beginning here, after the Mr. Beast burgers, I think a lot of people saw that and were like, wow, this is a really interesting new model for creators, for food, for cloud kitchens. It all kind of came together. But I think you started this before that. And then the next big one, at least that I've seen, is Pomp's, Bitcoin Pizza. And that was your first sale. So going back to the beginning, how does one come up with the idea that creators plus food and making these very boutique items for your audience, like orange chicken wings, should be a thing? How did you come up with that?
Last summer, I was just sort of thinking about what was next in food. And came to a realization that food has evolved over time, right? Food started as sustenance and nutrition, and we all have to eat to survive. But over time, with YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, food essentially became content. And who better to actually drive this next wave of food other than content creators? And again, going back, when you take a step back, you realize that it's actually really hard for creators to get into food. If you had a single location, you only reach 0.1% of your audience. And so it made a lot of sense that there was an opportunity here. And, with the advent of cloud kitchens, people were starting to get interested in the space. But, most of the plays at the time were like infrastructure plays, and, the people that were building sort of like what we call like virtual restaurant brands were building, sort of like very generic brands, right? They'd go into like a Photoshop or Canva, create a logo, create a menu, and then get restaurants to like go and actually make the food. But I think the differentiating piece for us is really like this idea that food has evolved, right? And the consumer that we're targeting is this sort of Gen Z audience who's ordering food delivery most frequently out of any other age band, and creating a unique, special experience for that target market. Where, unlike a DoorDash or Uber Eats or what have you, where you just sort of like scroll through a list of restaurants, scroll through a menu, and it shows up in a white plastic bag, how can we actually create something that's differentiated and is a lot of fun to actually be a part of?
It's almost like the internetization, that's not a word, but the internetization of food and restaurants, in that you have these creators, they have, because of the internet, zero distribution costs, massive audiences. They can reach everyone from, Shanghai to London, and anyone can subscribe. But if you wanted to go launch a food brand, you had to go buy a small, or rent physical space in one location. And you are essentially allowing them to reach all of their audience with zero distribution costs, just like the internet does with their content.
Exactly, right? Like the platform that we're building is asset light, right? We're not owning any kitchens. We're working with existing restaurants. So it's asset light. And then the CAC is super, super low because we're leveraging these creators that have massive audiences already. And that's, I think, the really interesting part about what we're building. If you sort of like, after launching the ZS brand, like one of the things that we quickly realized is that there's essentially like a triangle that is formed where the creators at the top, they've built this thing, and they can go and pitch it to their audience, right? So it's like sort of the bullhorn, and they're going and shouting this thing out of like, I created this, go give it a try or go experience it. And then what we found was, we were starting to create some of these assets around, here's where you can go and find the logo, here's where the website is, etc. And what we found was that there's like this middle tier that very quickly emerged of the creators' fans that would go and create their own content, right? And so you can go on YouTube and find, ZS's followers that have gone and made their own YouTube videos, like reviewing the wings. And so you get this sort of like nice like trifecta of marketing, where, it's coming through ZS, it's coming through fans, and then Popchew are also, able to push the brand as well.
Wow. Yeah. So you have like no capex up front, no spend. You don't have to build very much of anything because you're fundamentally a marketplace connecting people. And then two, have this giant growth engine because the people you're partnering with already have 1 million or 20 million fans who will go out and buy this. And then their audience builds content on top of their content. And you just get to tap into all the pieces of that like growth flywheel. And all you have to do is really make great food and then get it in the hands of restaurants and ultimately the people they deliver it to.
Exactly. No small feat, but yeah, that's 100%.
Yeah.
And I think like the really cool part of it is, we're able to go and interact with those fans as well, right? Like we go and on the product team, especially talking to users all the time. And, one of the cool things is like, they come to us and are like, hey, like you can use my content. And so we're able to go and like use all this like UGC and chop it up ourselves and post it to our own accounts. And again, just like grow our own accounts. But I think the sort of like hack here is that the creator is bringing their audience in through their brand up into the sort of like Popchew umbrella. And the more creator brands that we launch, the Popchew umbrella just grows and grows and grows. And over time, we're able to basically market these brands to this huge audience that we've built ourselves. And, we're able to go and like leverage essentially a consumer brand that we're building to go and try the new creator brands on the platform.
Because when I buy from Pomp or whoever it is, I get their thing. I came for their new piece of food content, but the bag it comes in is Popchew. And do I have to order it through a Popchew app or?
Yeah, so there's not a Popchew app today. There will be soon, but yeah, you can order on Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, etc. And then you can also order directly on Popchew.com. and go from there. But yeah, app coming soon. And again, with the app, it's not just about like, having a menu that you can scroll through. It's really about how do we create more of an experience around food.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. You don't want to create friction in that people have to go download the Popchew app, but it does come with the Popchew brand. And as they start buying more food from more of their creators under Popchew, they learn the brand, and then you build your own consumer audience.
Exactly.
Do you have ideas for what you want to do with that ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, I think today, like, we've already started thinking about what that is, right? And so, for example, on the bag, there's actually a giant QR code on the back of it, and when you scan that, you can enter into this sort of like universal delivery platform agnostic loyalty program, right? And so you can have ordered from Uber Eats or DoorDash, doesn't matter. You just scan the code, you enter into the loyalty program, and for every dollar that you spend on food, you earn 100 Popchew points. And you can redeem those points for prizes. And those prizes are anything that the creator wants to be promoting, right? And so, for example, with Zias's brand, you can go and be in a YouTube video with him. You can get a FaceTime from him. You can buy some merch. And it's just this extra sort of like incentive layer to be ordering the food. Essentially like the adult version of the McDonald's Happy Meal, if you will.
Yeah, it's like you're playing into everything that content creators and the creator economy does to make it more fun, along with the wings and everything else that you're building.
Totally. Right. And I think the other cool thing is like there's a bunch of features that we're developing all the time. One of the ones that we actually just launched is sort of like a referral incentive program where what we saw was like these micro influencers that follow Zias are buying the wings and then posting about it on Instagram. We're like, how can we go and actually just have this happen like all the time? And so we talked to them. They're like, yeah, just like build a referral program where I can get some kickback. And so we, built that in like a week and shipped it. And so I think like there's a bunch of potential of like what these apps can be around food, right? If you look at McDonald's or the Starbucks app, they're all like fairly generic, right? They're mostly just like a loyalty program. But I think that's just like the starting point for us. And it's really about how can you add in social into that, right? Can you go and see where your friends have ordered from? Can you go and challenge friends to earn more points? Can you go and like play these sort of like mini games that unlock new menu items? Just like how can we go and bring that interactivity back into food?
Yeah, something you said earlier that I love is food is content, which I think is very much true these days. I think Eugene Wei talks about how food is one of the next like means of status and just cultural symbols in our society because it's fundamentally like rare. It's scarce going to one of these nice restaurants or
100%.
getting wild cherry wings from your favorite creator. You can't do that every day. People like to talk about it. It's like a physical experience. It's all like very much built for social. And I guess we've seen that with like take pictures of your food for Instagram, but
Exactly, right? I think the common saying is the gram eats first or the phone eats first.
yeah, exactly. But like we're kind of past that. Like creators, everything has become more interactive. Like this is more built for the age of TikTok, not the age of Instagram.
Yep, exactly. I think like the other really cool thing, speaking of TikTok, right, is like what we're seeing is every month there's a new trend that happens, right, around food, whether it's like feta pasta or like the pasta chips, or there's like this like frozen grapes. And we're building a platform that can go and take advantage of these trends and very quickly put together a menu that's live all across the country for people to go and like get that product in real life.
Yeah, I've been thinking about the drops as a business model a little bit because I've gotten into NFTs and that's what they're built on. But they initially started with streetwear, like Nike's limited edition Jordans way back in the day that only a couple colors in a couple stores, limited edition, and then expanded to streetwear brands like Supreme, and now it's like NFTs. But you're also seeing it in food. Like Popeyes drops like a rare spicy chicken sandwich in like 12 locations, and there's lines around the block. Like Rick and Morty talks about Szechuan sauce. McDonald's brings it back for one weekend only. And I think that like drop model combined with creators is another piece that will make it will just really resonate right now with
100%.
the culture.
There's a writer, I believe his name is Clayton Chambers, and he's super into streetwear, but he actually recently wrote a piece about how food is the new streetwear. And I think that's super true.
Yeah, food, NFTs, really anything that has like rarity, it's like limited edition. I don't know why that all those things we just gravitate to as humans, but like it seems to be the driving force for just products these days as a strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, what we're seeing is that there's a lot of stuff that's just become generic over time. And, out of that like bunch of generic stuff, there has to be these sort of like interesting tidbits that can actually go and like, ignite sort of like a cultural change. If you think about like restaurants, for example, right, and here in New York, there's probably like a handful of restaurants that like everyone else knows, right? There's like everyone knows what Carbone is, right? And
Yeah.
there's actually this like
Is what I was going to say, actually.
exactly right. And there's like this photo that came out right at the beginning of COVID when Carbone was closed, but was now open for delivery, and it's like 200 delivery drivers standing right outside Carbone, like waiting to pick up their order. It's actually like an insane photo to like even think about. But I think that's the world that we're in, and I think that's the one that we're sort of like building for at Popchew, which is like no one really cares about Subway anymore, right? If you're like 20 something years old, like Subway is just some other like brand. But I think the sort of like interesting piece is how can you go and create the next level of food brands that we actually go and care about.
Yeah. The age of like ultimate abundance, everything becomes about the culture.
Yeah.
Circling back to the business, though, it sounds like it's a win-win-win because the creators get to launch a food line, which is super cool. Two, the restaurants get extra revenue, and then Popchew obviously gets customers. And what you have to do, your like core problem, is build all those really fun kind of bonus features that we talked about to make it pop, but then also build the entire logistics engine to reach all of these restaurants. Is that about
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's super cool. It reminds me, it's like the two ways to make money in business are become a middleman or cut out a middleman, and you're almost doing that, but for an entirely new wave of food.
Exactly. Yeah. I think like, yeah, almost in like both of those cases, right? I think like we're becoming a middleman in some aspects, but we're also cutting it out.
I think on the creator side, it's really an interesting new space. When you look at like the creators who can build out this type of thing, who are you targeting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like for now we're really targeting anywhere from 1 million followers across some key channels like a YouTube or an Instagram, for example, all the way up to 20 million plus.
Mm-hmm.
We have a bunch of creators that we haven't announced yet that have already joined onto Popchew that I would say are on that like higher end of the spectrum.
And then you have over 300 locations across the US. How do you go about, from a just business operation side, how do you go about actually partnering with all of these different locations? What's it look like on the operational backend side after a creator has come up with the menu they like and you're beginning to actually roll it out?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, every day we're adding more and more restaurants to the platform. So we have a sales team that's going out. It's a mix of like cold calling. It's a mix of inbound. There's incentives for restaurants to go and refer one another. And basically, we have a almost like an online education portal for our restaurants. And so we basically upload the menu, all the steps. They're able to go and watch the videos that are created. Right. So there's sort of like the top down, like how to make this thing. They're able to watch that. There's like quizzes in there to make sure that they're actually doing it properly. They need to show us that they're actually doing that properly as well. And then once they have done that, we're able to set them live, and they can go and produce this food and make it available for delivery, in their geography.
Yeah, and it's interesting because on the cloud kitchen piece, are there enough cloud kitchens in the US to be able to do this now? It's something that I've heard a lot about, but I haven't actually seen any companies really developing it other than whatever Travis Kalanick is building at the moment.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a bunch of like companies that are building ghost kitchen infrastructure. Cloud Kitchens is the one that's the largest or the one that a lot of people know about. But there's a bunch, right? There's Kitchen United and there's several others. There isn't like a single company that has coverage all across the U.S. right in the places that we need. And so that's where we're working with independent restaurants, just because there's literally restaurants everywhere. And we can go and build out our infrastructure nationwide where our customers are, right? One of the sort of things that we want to make sure that we're able to provide for our creators is that they're able to reach their audience. And that means that we're not just in, New York, LA, Miami, right? We need to be in every single college town there is. And by working with independent restaurants, we're able to do that. And also, support these independent businesses to grow themselves.
So it's almost like the Uber model where you have to launch in a bunch of different cities before you can really take off. You're scaling a logistics network just like all of the other delivery companies we know of.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So there's some like logic and math that goes into like which cities we're launching and when, right? Because there are certain towns that make more sense for us to go to first, to make sure that the majority of creators and their audiences are able to actually like order the food. And then from there, right, it's like spending a bunch of time on these like sort of like small towns and like how do we go and activate them. And of course, like as we grow larger and larger, restaurants start finding out about us and they start coming to us directly. And that's one thing that we found, right? Like we launched the Zias brand and we had hundreds of restaurants reach out to us directly saying like, hey, can we go and join the Popchew platform and like do business with you basically. And so we're going to just see more and more of that as we scale up.
Yeah, it's almost like a scaled. Well, I don't want to compare you to this, but I was going to say almost like a scaled McDonald's in some ways, in that it's the same in every single location, or it should be the same in every single location, but you're doing it in this distributed manner instead of, showing up and building a little space. And
that's a good question that a lot of people ask, but we have partnerships with the major food distributors. We have an amazing culinary team. And we're able to put together menus, and through our partnerships, whether you're ordering in LA or New York, you get the exact same ingredients, the exact same food, the exact same packaging, delivered to your door.
yeah, that's fascinating because you're giving them a whole nother line of revenue. There was make your own food, there was make your own food for customers in your store, and then also delivery. And now there's this third piece, which is like, well, you have a kitchen and we need kitchen. So, like, here's another revenue line, which is make other food. I guess it's kind of like catering, which has always existed, but a bit different because it's, again, not their recipe, it's yours.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like one thing that you'll find is like a lot of restaurateurs are in this for the business as well, right? They're here to like grow and provide for their family, and we're able to provide incremental revenue on top of their existing business, with relatively low effort from their side. And the other sort of like interesting benefit that we're able to provide, which we didn't even realize when we started this, is that because of our scale, we're able to actually reduce the cost of operating for our restaurants, right? Through our partnerships with, say, like a US Foods, for example, because we're ordering, hundreds of pounds of wings, we're actually able to negotiate down the prices beyond what a typical, individual restaurant would able to get, and we're able to pass along those costs to them or those savings.
So you've built in like almost collective bargaining the
Exactly.
more restaurants you have on the platform.
Yep.
And then the creators, do they also pay a like meaningful commission to you for building out this entire product?
Yeah. So right now it's free for the creators to get started on Popchew.
Wow.
And yeah, and so we handle the upfront costs there. And what on our end we're really prioritizing like how can we shorten the launch time of a brand, but also reduce the costs. And so it's actually not that expensive in our current platform to go and launch a brand, and so we're able to take those costs on ourselves. And yeah, I think over the next several months we'll be launching several brands every single month.
I would love for you to tell the story about Pomp and Bitcoin
Sure.
Pizza because I
Yeah.
think the way that came together is fun and illustrates like how this is going to work with creators moving forward.
The Palm story was funny and maybe like a bit outside of how it will typically go going forward. Hopefully.
What was your
Uh,
first sale, right?
yeah, exactly. I think like in true startup fashion, started on the floor of my apartment, sitting on the yoga mat with Nick, in front of a whiteboard, and we were at the time like working on getting our seed round together. And people were saying like this is super interesting, but we want to see some evidence that like you can actually pull this off first. And Pomp was no different. He was like, this is super interesting, but I want to see this actually work. And so literally that night, we sent him a website called Bang Bang Pizza that we threw together in, like 3 or 4 hours. And it was a box of pizza and his face on it. And we were like, how about you be our first creator? Let's like prove to you that this works, and then we can go from there. And he loved the idea, and that's how Bitcoin Pizza was born. And so at the end of May, so May 22nd is when we launched Bitcoin Pizza in 10 cities across the country. We had New York, LA, Miami, Chicago, and a handful of other locations. It was basically me and Nick and a couple of volunteers working like nights and weekends to basically pull it off. And the launch went, super well. We did 100K in GMV in the first 7 days of the launch. And what was super cool was being able to see the power of these creators in person, right? So Pomp came up from Miami. We did sort of a little launch party in Washington Square Park. And literally like 1,000 people showed up to this thing. It was insane. And, we were handing out pizza as fast as we could. We had these like sort of like plastic tables set up. We had boxes of pizza, and people were just like lining up, and we would hand out pizzas to them. And basically like a second line formed. And we didn't realize at first like what it was for. But then like they finally came up to us and were like, hey, like, can we go and get one of those like empty boxes? And this like second line just like continued to grow of people basically taking our trash home as collectibles. And then, later that night when we got home, we looked on eBay and they were selling these boxes for, $1,000 plus. And so it was just like a wild day. And that, really formalized, what we were doing and kicked off an actual seed round, which we closed. And then, started getting more and more creators in the pipeline.
Rare pizza boxes. Yeah, that's crazy. That really shows you the power of creators. Also, I love that you wanted to name it Bang Bang, and then Pomp was like, this is a great idea, but pizza, Bitcoin, like, you got to put all of that together.
The reason that we actually called it Bang Bang, so at the time he would always, I think it was like, he loved Domino's. And so every Friday he would tweet about Domino's. And his tagline was Bang Bang, that he would like add to everything that he would say. And so that's how that came together. But the Bitcoin, the pizza thing made so much sense, right? Like, I think it was like 11 years ago or 12 years ago now, there's this guy named Laszlo who bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin, which would now be, $300-400 million. And it was a cool way to sort of like celebrate that moment, and, build a brand around this community.
Yeah, and that matters for anyone who doesn't know the story, because it was the first ever transaction with Bitcoin for like a thing. And I don't know how he convinced whoever he was buying it from that they should take this magic fictional internet money that had just come into existence in like a
hopefully
corner of the
whoever took the deal didn't sell it.
Yeah, hopefully they still have their keys.
Exactly.
Yeah, but what's really interesting about both the Bitcoin Pizza and the wings that you were talking about is that they really have to do with the creator. They're like built into the creator's brand, and they're totally different, right? Bitcoin Pizza and like hip hop style wings. How do you work with creators to find something that like makes sense for them, but is also food? Because that's also like fundamentally new.
The core of it is that like everyone eats, right? And so I think it's like what we found is like a lot of the creators that we work with or have come to us with ideas, they're generating these ideas from their side, right? They understand their audience, they understand like what they want. And so they're coming to us with the idea of like, hey, like, what do you think about us doing wings? Or what do you think about us doing a salad brand or a bowl brand? And then like these kinds of flavors. And I think over time, what we're moving towards is a very sort of like somewhat like automated process of like building your menu, right? Like we're in the kitchen all the time and we're creating a bunch of unique flavors and recipes for various sauces, or various toppings on a burger, for example. And we can essentially just build a giant, catalog of these different types of flavors, for someone to just come and like, click a handful of buttons and put together a really compelling and tasty menu. And so I think that's like the direction that we're headed. because we know that these people are coming to us with these ideas already, can we go and just like make it available for all the creators that come to us?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and allows you to kind of standardize across all of your many, many restaurant
Totally.
partners.
And I think like the other piece of this is like there might be like multiple wing brands on Popchew, but I think that's fine, right? You can still differentiate on sides and sauces and branding and prizes and the experience that you're providing to still create something that's differentiated.
Is there anything else in the world of food or creators outside of Popchew that you think is interesting? I often ask this question in like the biotech space, which is a little bit easier where someone's building a gene therapy and I'm like, what else are you interested in? And they bring up, some proteins cultured by cells or something like that. Food might be a little more complex, but it sounds like you love the space and have been in it for a long time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's like sort of like two things. One is Gary Vee recently announced his like NFT restaurant here in Manhattan.
Hmm.
And so it's essentially like you can buy the token, and that gives you access to like enter into the restaurant. I think that's like interesting and maybe a signal of some of the direction that we're moving to with like exclusivity. And I think like the other sort of like interesting thing is like more and more restaurants like moving towards you know what's next after COVID, basically, right? Like there's been a lot of changes in New York, especially, right? There's like parklets everywhere, which is like a very nice change. You can now like eat outside in summers, super nice. But right, like the QR code has like taken over. And what does that actually lead to, right? Can we go and do like dynamic menu pricing now? That would be kind of interesting. So I think like there's going to be a bunch of like interesting new products and tech that's developed in the next like several years, with just how restaurants have adapted to COVID.
Yeah, dynamic menu pricing. Scary. I don't know if I want dynamic menu
Right.
pricing.
Like you used to have to like print an entire new set of menus, right? But now like you can literally just like overnight just update the prices of everything. Or even maybe the person next to you is paying a different price than you are.
Yeah, or if you're out of something, take it off the menu.
Right.
And yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really thought about innovation through QR codes. I paid with my phone recently via a
Right.
QR code from Toast, which was fantastic. But it seems like all of that is very basic innovation, if any. I am curious if QR codes transform into anything beyond the kind of like pure skeuomorphic menu on your phone.
Exactly. And I think like, there's a lot of changes that happen in food, especially like in Asia first and then come to the US. I
Yeah.
think like QR codes is like one of those things, but there's a bunch of other things as well, right? And so like one thing in Asia that's super popular right now is like sending or gifting food to friends, right? Or like watching like mukbangs, right? And like in the US, we have Twitch streaming, right? And like everyone watching other people's game, but mukbang isn't like that big of a thing, but maybe it becomes a bigger thing here.
What is mukbang?
Mukbang is basically like watching someone else eat, and then you can like interact with them while they're doing that. And it's just like I think again this sort of like piece of a bunch of young people being at home alone, with nothing better to do. And I think for us it's just like how can we go and give them something better to do, and let you actually interact with your friends even in the digital world, but around food.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I had never heard of that. Asia is just so much further ahead than the US in all things e-commerce and delivery,
Yeah.
and especially food delivery. But yeah, that's that's fascinating.
There's this coffee shop that the name is slipping my mind, but it started in China. And what was really cool about it is it entirely operated on WeChat. And you would basically go and create your own digital coffee shop. And it was like a ghost kitchen coffee shop. But you would create your own digital storefront and basically get a link that your friends could order from, and they'd be ordering from your coffee shop. And the more sales that you were driving, basically you were unlocking additional features in your coffee shop. You could unlock different types of coffees. You could unlock different types of packaging. And it was just like really interesting sort of like way of like that company growing its audience by leveraging its like fans or its customers to essentially do the marketing for them. And I think like that's sort of a really good example of sort of maybe what's to come.
Wow. So that's like I could put up on my Twitter, hey, there's this little Japanese coffee shop down the street that I get coffee at almost like every day. It's called Davel. Hey, everybody who's around here should order or go to Davel. They have like these awesome karage for like $8 and all this other stuff. And based on how many people go, I can then get discounts.
Yeah, essentially, right? But instead it would be like a Joe storefront for that coffee shop that they would go through.
And I could even get kickbacks if it's big enough. And depending on
Exactly.
how you structure it, like I could just get 10% of every sale.
Right.
That's super interesting. Well, my last question for everybody on the show is about vision. I'd love to hear where you would like to see Popchew in 10 or even 15 years.
I think the vision for the company is really to establish a platform to build the next great generation of food brands. Right? Like, I think the way that we're changing is changing over time. The way that we're eating is changing over time. And, food delivery is just the start, right? Like, we're in sort of like V1 of what food delivery is. And at Popchew, like, it's super fun and exciting to sort of explore and build what that next generation of food delivery will bring. Whether that's, new brands or new experiences, both in the digital world, but also in the physical world. And so we're super excited about what's next in food.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about the like unpacking the business with you from this is logistics for creators to this is actually a distributed like cloud kitchen engine to, the creators' fans are also going to be selling this for us and creating new content on top of it. And
Right.
then, oh, by the way, they all also become Popchew fans over time because
Exactly.
we're
I
powering
think
their
that's
favorite.
the hack, right? Is like over time, we're essentially building a consumer facing brand. And I think that's something that is sort of like unique to like how we're doing things versus maybe some of the other like competitors that are out there. But I think like that's the bet that we're making, right? Is that over time having this like consistent brand that for loyalty, that for customer service, that is like this home for how creators build their brands is going to become extremely important, especially because quality and consistency is so important in food. Being able to know that like this one company is behind these brands gives you this sort of like peace of mind when you're ordering. And again, over time, lets us build our own audience, which then lets us go and market in different ways. Maybe lets us go and build our own experiences. Maybe lets us go and build our own pop-up stores or flagship stores in key cities around the world. And yeah, like I think the powerful future there is sort of unlimited, right? When you think about building something that's very asset light in the beginning, right? But also something that is super low on CAC because you're able to leverage the following of these creators.
Yeah, that's wild. Pretty transformative ideas, which are the best when I get to talk to companies who are building that kind of thing. All right. Well, Rushir, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. I will be ordering from Popchew in New York sometime soon.
Amazing. Cool. Thanks, Joe.